Welcome to the Comfortably Hungry podcast with me, Sam Bilton, a food historian and author. If you're a peckish person who is curious about the history of food and drink, then you're in the right place. I often get asked questions about how I got into culinary history, so I thought this little bonus episode would be a good opportunity to chat with my fellow food historians, Neil Buttery, Ntinas, and Pino about their experiences. We also discuss why we felt the time is ripe to create Serve It Forth, a new food history festival which will take place on Saturday the 18th of October 2025. Here's what we had to say. Hello and welcome to a very special episode. I'm Sam Bilton, the host of the Comfortably Hungry podcast, and today I'm joined by my colleagues in crime, Pino and Neil Buttery, and also Ntinas, to celebrate something we've all been working on behind the scenes, the Serve It Forth Food History Festival. Hello, Ali. It's lovely to be working with you on this festival. So do you want to tell everyone a little bit about yourself?
I do, Sam, and I perked up when you said crime. I'm Ali. I write about Gothic food and the dark side of food. I'm also the co-host of Fear Feast, which is a podcast about food and horror.
And Tom, how about you?
Hello, I'm Ntinas, and I'm a podcaster, broadcaster, engineer, chef, and also host and creator of the Delicious Legacy podcast, a podcast that explores ancient food and traditional food from around the globe.
And Neil, last
Hello.
but not least.
I'm Neil Buttery. I'm a food historian and chef specialising in British food history. I suppose I'm the host of the British Food History podcast, co-host of A's for Apple, and I've got blogs and all sorts of bits and bobs going on in the background.
Well, I guess we ought to tell everyone exactly what it is we've been doing over the past few months. So what exactly is Serve It Forth? Neil, do you want to explain to everyone?
Yeah. Well, Serve It Forth is an idea that we all had together. I can't quite remember who had the initial idea now. It just seemed to have formed organically, didn't it? But
It did.
The idea was to have something that was focusing on food history, but was not a symposium, not a stuffy symposium. Even I personally quite like stuffy symposiums, but something that had more of a festival feel. So, we wanted the chance to be able to do things like food demos, as well as different talks and discussions and things like that. So, yes, try and produce something that, people who are just maybe a little bit interested in food history or traditional cooking, people would enjoy that, as well as kind of more full-on food historians like us.
Yeah, and do something that basically people can enjoy all over the world. So our first one is going to be exclusively online.
Yes.
It is indeed. And Ali, do you want to tell us a bit about your actual segment or how the day is going to work?
Yeah, so I think we're going to have our individual talks, and some of us will have guests and some of us won't. And I personally have a wonderful guest who is a death historian. And when people ask me what a food historian does, often the waters are a bit murky in that sense. There's not much available information. So I thought I'd ask my colleague to join me on this journey towards the depths of London's kind of culinary and funerary past together, which is a little bit unusual. But I thought maybe something different would be interesting. So we'll be looking at whaling sites along the Thames, feasting tables, memento mori traditions, and we're going to examine the river's shifting shorelines. I think mudlarking has become very, very popular lately. So I'm hoping that this is a topic that will interest quite a few people as well. Just
It's
to
very
look at
intriguing.
Yes.
Yeah.
And right up your street.
It is. A bit of
River.
investigation. Yes, quite.
Sam, what are you doing for yours?
Well, I've got a book coming out shortly are called Much Ado About Cooking, which is based on the food in Shakespeare's plays. So I wanted to look at one of Shakespeare's most famous and probably foodie characters, which is Sir John Falstaff, because he's often described as a glutton. But I think maybe he's been misjudged, perhaps. We'll see. I've got a panel of guests joining me, some Shakespearean experts, and also Brigitte Webster of the Tudor Experience, who is an expert on Tudor food. And we're going to be talking about whether Falstaff is a glutton or a gourmand.
Oh, that's very interesting.
Let's see what our judgment is at the end of it.
Yes. I mean, I'm no expert in Shakespeare, obvs. But one thing that I do know is, you can really mine Falstaff's character
Yes.
to get an idea of just the names of the different kinds of foods people were eating, but also what they meant in society as well, I suppose.
Yes, indeed. Yeah.
Very interesting.
Very.
Looking
What about
forward to
you,
that.
Tom? What are you going to be doing?
Well, I'm going to explore my very ancient culinary roots, and I'm going to go back to ancient Greek society, the Pan-Hellenic world in the ancient Mediterranean, in a sense. And I'm going to check and find out what recipes did they have, if they had famous or infamous chefs in the ancient world, and what kind of ingredients did they use, what sauces, what spices, and how they cooked, basically. And we're gonna kind of try and recreate an ancient Greek symposium with some wine and some food, of course.
Excellent.
Of course. Sounds brilliant. So, Neil, what are you doing then?
Well, I'm kicking off the day, first session, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. And I'm very excited because my guest is going to be Tom Parker Bowles, who is a bastion of knowledge when it comes to food history and traditional cooking. Is a big fan of keeping traditional food alive. And that's what we're going to be talking about, really. How traditional foods can be kept alive. Should they be changed? How do you keep them relevant? And of course, we're going to have a little bit of a chat of some of the food enjoyed by British monarchs too, from maybe sort of Queen Victoria to the present day. So it's very exciting.
It is very exciting.
Fantastic.
Can't wait for that.
Yeah.
So, as you said, Neil, this isn't going to be a stuffy symposium. And I'm like you, I like a good symposium as much as the next food historian. But that's us. We want to make this a bit more democratic, don't we? We want it to make food history accessible to anyone, irrespective of what their backgrounds are.
Yes.
So what are we going to be offering? How are we going to make this have a festival feel? Because it's online. We're not in person at the moment. What else are we going to be doing or offering?
Are there going to be little foodie interludes, perhaps?
Yes, we want to try and sort of replicate what it might be like if you were at a festival. So you might go see somebody give a talk, or you might go see a discussion, but then you'd have a little wander around, wouldn't you? Maybe look at some live food demos, or maybe buy some food yourself to eat. So we're going to try and replicate that between the different sessions with some little pre-recorded food demos of ourselves, and a word from our sponsor, which is very exciting as well.
Yes, we mustn't forget them.
The fantastic Netherton Foundry have very kindly sponsored this very first festival. So we're going to have a talk with Sue Curry about the history behind Netherton Foundry and their ethos. So that's going to be good fun. But it's not just going to be that. We're going to be making some cocktails.
Indeed.
Yes.
Yeah.
We may or may not be doing that live.
But we'll definitely
We may or
be
may not be
drinking.
getting trolleyed on the first.
Should be said they were doing this at the end of the end of the day.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Not at 10:30 in the morning.
Well, speak for yourself, Sam.
Bit of Dutch courage might be required.
So I've got to ask you guys, how did you all get into food history?
Who's going to start?
You, Tom.
You Tom.
Yeah. Well, obviously, I started something completely different. I studied engineering, but in between studying and long summers and so on, I needed to do something to occupy myself and also earn some money, some pocket money. So I used to cook in kitchens, in restaurants, Greek tavernas around the UK, and then subsequently in pubs and so on. So I'm a cook of sorts and a chef, but also I love history. I love history, just any kind of history. I just sit for hours on Wikipedia. I learn things for fun. So at some point, I combined both things together, and that happened while I was in a bar one night, and I was drinking with some friends. And then I went down to the toilet, and next to the toilet was the kitchen. And there was a book in the kitchen. And I went into the kitchen and I nicked the book. And
You nicked it?
Yes.
Did you give it back, or you literally nicked it?
I did give it back, but the next day. So I took it with me. It was Salis Granger's The Classical Cookbook.
Oh, yes.
Oh, okay.
So I was in Greece, in a Greek restaurant bar, and I found this book in Greek. And I took it and I read it during the night. And then the next night I went back to the bar and I left it in the kitchen again. And basically I was intrigued. I was completely and utterly beguiled with all these weird spices and herbs that I never heard of in Greek or in English. They're words for, silphium or asafoetida or, garum. What is this garum? And wow, and all that stuff. So I was like, I need to start making these recipes. And basically I combined those two things together and I started doing it ever since.
That's good though, isn't it? It's one of those things like, it's like chaos theory, isn't it? A butterfly flaps its wings over here, then next year you're getting a tornado or something opposite side of the world. If you hadn't spotted that book.
I know. It's just like...
Did they ever realise that you nicked it?
No.
I know you returned it,
yeah.
but you're very quick at returning it.
Yeah. It was...
You're not one of those people who returns a book and it's all got dog-eared and you've broken the spine down the back.
In one night, Tom was really going for it. Talk about going on a bender. What about you, Sam? How did you get into food history?
Gosh, well, I mean, I didn't start, a bit like Tom, I didn't start out in food history. I've always loved food, I've always loved history, and I've loved writing, but it took me nearly 40 years to combine all of those things. So I was in marketing, and then I left my job and had kids. And whilst I was bringing up my young children with my husband, I should add, I didn't do it single-handedly. It sounds like I'm making it some heroic act. But I went back to university and I did an MA in culinary arts. And I had the aim to become a deli owner, but I quickly realised that probably wasn't going. It was going to be quite stressful with a young family, and decided that perhaps I should just concentrate on the writing. So it's how I got into writing about food, and I love history, so I wanted to focus on historical things. So yeah, here we are, 4 books later, and still loving it.
And a festival, and a food festival.
And a food history festival, yes, indeed.
And 2 podcasts.
And 2 podcasts. Yes, I didn't say at the beginning. I am also a co-host on the A's for Apple podcast, and as well as Comfortably Hungry, which I'm delighted to be a part of. And I thoroughly love doing what I do. So
award-winning podcaster, Sam.
I wasn't going to say that, but since you mention it, I mean,
some
it's one award winner to another, Mr. Dr. Buttery. You've also won awards for your books. So, yeah.
Shucks.
So how did you get into food history?
Well, I got into food history and writing because I knew nothing about food history and I was terrible at writing. I started a PhD in evolutionary biology, specifically looking at the evolution of social behavior, like cooperation and altruism, but also sort of selfishness and spitefulness, I guess, the other sides of those coins. And I'd been a teacher for a few years, 7 years, I think I'd been teaching, and I was really worried about all the writing I was going to have to do. So a friend of mine had bought me a pack of Penguin books. This is a bit similar to your story, Tom. In the pack of books, there was a couple of Elizabeth Davids, there was Rick Stein's first book, and there was English Food by Jane Grigson. And it's been sat on my shelf for a good year, unread. And I can't remember why. I was flicking through it one day and I thought, this is great. And I thought this would be a good project whilst I start this PhD. It's got nothing to do with what I'm doing. I can just do this. It'll be fun. I can work through them. A friend of mine said, well, why don't you write a blog about it? And then you'll be practicing writing too. And that was it, really. That was my way in. So it's very much from the point of view of finding out about a subject that I didn't know anything about. And I love me going in the kitchen anyway. So yeah, that was a Neil Cooks Grigson blog, which then when I moved to America, cooking for American friends, making things like roly-polies, which, we're meant to eat weird British food, right, according to Americans, but I proved them wrong. And that's when the penny dropped, really. And I started up my food businesses and had the restaurant and things like that. I've never had a big plan. I've just gone wherever I'm interested now. And these days it's researching and writing and things like that.
Finally, Ali.
Well, I've always been interested in history, just like you, but also I'm a co-host of A is for Apple, which I find really enjoyable because when you are searching and looking things up, you're always finding things that are quite unusual, things that you've never heard of, or an author that's written about something. And it's just a never-ending pot of gold, really, history. But also, as I was studying and I was doing my PhD and writing about history, there was one thing that was always in the back of my mind, and it was, why do we focus on certain events, or why do we focus on certain recipes or foods and not others? So why is it that we choose what we choose, and how does that shape our present and impact on the future? And that was something that and I have to shout out to my supervisor, Lucy Bond, who introduced me to the whole world of cultural memory, and cultural food memory was something that I then developed with my own theories. So I've been working on that and just trying to understand what it is that drives people to do certain things, and, why bake that kind of pie or make sausages that way? What is it that's behind that? So I'm coming from that perspective.
Brilliant. And guys, I want to ask you what was your childhood food obsessions? What really, really made you love food?
Well, for me, it's home cooking from the point of view of me, from, my mum, is all fairly standard British fare, I suppose. But, we're a very sweet tooth family. So I think for me, it was desserts and puddings and things like that, which is probably the one thread that has been with me through my entire life. Anything that can be served with custard.
Yeah. I was always licking my mother's cake mix implements. Yes. It's like, no, it's raw egg or something. I don't care. It's nice.
Didn't we all do that? I mean, it's just part of the joy of being a kid, isn't it?
I don't think everybody does do that, though.
Oh, really?
Not anymore.
Well, no, I think maybe now people are a bit too worried about, as you say, the raw egg and stuff. But yeah, I let my kids lick the bowl out. Yeah, they're still here. So I'm still here, so it's a good thing. For me, my childhood obsession when I was a kid was my mum had a copy of Good Housekeeping cookery. It's like it's kind of, I guess, like the Delia Smith book before Delia came out. And in the centre, there was a picture of a roast swan. There wasn't a recipe for a roast swan, but there was a little section on historical cooking. And I'm sure it's completely historically incorrect, but there's this banquet which has a roast swan in the centre. And I was absolutely fascinated by that because I was told that we weren't allowed to eat the swans because they belonged to the Queen. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, or the royal family. So, yeah, that's. I will have to ask Tom about that when Tom Parker Bowles, when he's on at the Food History Festival, whether that's true or not. But
it can be our first Q&A.
It would be, couldn't it?
Yeah.
But I was fascinated. I guess I was always drawn to history, and I've always thought a good way to learn about history is through the food people ate in different eras. So when my kids were little, I used to go into the school and do things like Egyptian food demos, and as in ancient Egyptian food and Roman food, and I've done the Tudors and stuff. So yeah, that's kind of how I don't know, I've always been interested in that aspect, whether it's food related to travel, food related to history, just food. I just love food.
Fair enough. Ali?
My obsession was fish and chips in a newspaper. Because I was born in North London, if I could have that every day after school, I would be happy. And in parallel with that, when I go back to Italy, because my mum is Italian, I would have the fried fish in not a newspaper, but like some oil kind of paper that absorbs all the oil. But everything was just, it made everything taste better, the paper. And yes, fish and chips like that, they don't taste like they did before.
No.
I know
It was
I
a
sound
sad-
ancient
it was a
now.
sad day when newspapers were banned.
Honestly, I was so happy. Anything fried and in batter, but lightly. It wasn't because, for example, I can't have a battered sausage. That's a step too far for me. But I can have fish and chips and other types of fried stuff. Love fried food.
What about a battered Mars bar?
Never tried it. So that's next after Bovril, Sam.
For me, it was always a roast lamb. So every Christmas and Easter, we'll have a whole roast lamb on a spit roast, basically. So it was always something I was looking forward to, having the leg, the bone, and chewing on the bone for hours afterwards. I think I've got pictures throughout my childhood every year with a bone in my mouth like this.
Amazing.
Brilliant.
So, Neil, how are you going to top a bone in your mouth at different stages of your life in terms of childhood obsessions?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think I can.
Right. So what do we think about food history? What it is, and what it isn't. What are the common misconceptions that people have about our profession, let's say?
I think one of the things that I get asked more often is, how do you do this job when we eat food and then nothing's left? So then I can bring up my example of the carbonized Pompeii panis quadrados bread that I worked on for the Pompeii exhibition in 2013. Highlight of my life. But yes, it's quite hard to look at preserved foods, and in that case, the lava and the explosion, everything that happened in Naples, was able to preserve certain things, and among this, the bread. And so I worked on a kind of bread mystery, as there was a kind of groove going around the bread, and we didn't really know what that was. And obviously the mark on the bread and things like this. So in very rare cases, you get to see things like that. And I guess with Egyptian food as well, I mean, there might be something left over in the tombs, etc. But that's one of the things I get asked the most is like, what are you analysing? What are you looking at if there's nothing left?
And it's hard, isn't it? Because recipes aren't necessarily that detailed. So you have to fill in quite a few gaps yourself, especially if you're going really far back, sort of Middle Ages and earlier. That's for sure.
Yeah, anything before, like the Renaissance, in a sense, it was more vague than actually what we consider nowadays as a recipe.
Yeah.
Yes. And I know when we do A's for Apple, don't we? We often look at recipes and we say to each other, that's not really how you do it. Like, you write it this way, but do you do it this way? Like, it's never exactly, it's always a kind of performance. So, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. You're right.
Yes. Well, it's learning how recipes worked. They're not like they are now, where you're expected to have every single step down to the minute and every single temperature to the nearest five degrees. You have to fill in the gaps. And you've also got to have a bit of knowledge yourself. You have to bring some of that to the table. And you also have to know that the person that you're cooking for, what they like and what they don't like.
Yeah.
So in a recipe from 250 years ago, no one would even dare tell you how rare something should be or how seasoned should be. Yeah, that's up to you. So they're done in a very different way. So it's quite a hard thing to get over, I think, when you first start looking at historical recipes. You have to actually bring some of your personality to it. That's partly the point.
Yeah, I should say that's the point of all cooking, though, isn't it? Even in the modern era, it
should be
today. You add I think all of us are cooks, so all of us, I'm sure, add our spin on recipes, even if you're cooking from a book that was published in 2025. So that's part of the joy of being a cook, isn't it?
Yes, I think when you're confident, but if you're not a cook, I think people who produce cookery books, what I'm saying is, one time I had to help out with some recipes for a book. I won't say what the book was, but one of the recipes was goose blood tart. So I did a lot of research, and my recipe said the blood of 2 geese, and I got a comment back saying, how many mils is that? I don't know. It's just 2 geese. You just work with what you've got.
Yeah.
But that was not how they worked at that particular publishing house. So I just made something.
No.
Things get very scientific, don't they? And I hear other chefs saying, like, you don't really just cook onions for that for 2 or 3 minutes.
The caramelized onions thing. Yeah, they take
I've
an
heard
hour,
that before.
But recipes say 5 minutes, don't they? Yeah.
So there's certain rules and regulations of books, I guess, and also Neil being, I think, specialized also in as a medievalist, that from hearing things that you say and do, the fact that religion at some point was so predominant, whereas now it's slightly more, more in the background when it comes to cooking. That side of things, the societal changes and.
Well, that's something that I didn't know much about because, I've not studied English particularly. In fact, I was sort of put off it in secondary school. So one thing that I wasn't ever doing, I wasn't reading literature that told you about where the food fit in daily life. That's only something that I've only in the last few years really only started coming round to.
Yeah.
I think one of the things I do when I'm recreating recipes from the past is I always try to be as faithful as possible to the flavourings and the flavour of the dish. But I always say I'm not a culinary archaeologist. I'm not sitting there with my spits to roast beef, and I'm certainly not whisking egg whites for 8 hours with a bunch of twigs. I'm using a whisk, a modern electric whisk. Because I find, realistically, most people aren't going to recreate a recipe in their kitchen unless they're really, really keen historians using the original methods.
Yes.
I would like to think that any cook from the past, if they could jump into a TARDIS and whisk forward to 2025, would be glad to see that they didn't have to whisk egg whites with a bunch of twigs for 8 hours.
Sure.
Yeah, absolutely. But it is the magic of cooking, because you think, well, I'll do it this way. It's a historical recipe. And we're under this illusion that somehow we're recreating something from the past. And, it is magical.
Yeah. Fit as well as you can, but I don't worry if there's something you can't do, or you have to cut a corner or do something different. It's better than not making it at all. That's for sure.
Yeah.
You always learn something.
Yes. Do you think there's a reason why food history feels so important right now at this moment?
That's a good question.
Because we mentioned that Serve It Forth is kind of the first online food history festival. There hasn't been one before. Is there a reason that it's becoming, something quite strong that people look for?
Well, I think social history, which food history I suppose fits in largely anyway, is getting more and more popular. I think academia hasn't been too fussed about food history in the past, but I think even academia is catching up with most people. People want to know, I think, more, not about necessarily who Henry VIII, or what Henry VIII was eating. Although that's interesting too, I suppose, but they would much rather know what they would have been eating, or maybe what the servants were doing, because that's where they probably would have been. It's where I would have been. I wouldn't have been.
Yes.
I would have been one of the king's best mates. I'd have been a server or something, or working in the kitchens. And so I think that's getting much more, it's kind of waxing at the minute in the sort of consciousness, all sorts of public history. So I think that's part of it.
Yes. It would make sense as we're in this era of, the Anthropocene, where we put ourselves at the center. We're like, what would I be doing? Would I be a scullery maid, or would I be, someone helping the queen, or what would I be eating? I suppose that makes sense. We always want to put ourselves in other people's shoes.
Yeah, and the great thing about food history is it's the closest you can get to going in a time machine. You can get pretty close, I think.
Yeah, you
people
can.
Are eating, yeah. So I think it's as far as I'm concerned. I'm not somebody who likes to dress up, so for me, it's the most immersive thing that I can do, and I guess that's probably just why I got into it in the first place.
So we're not going to see you in a ruff with your stockings anytime soon.
No way.
Oh, you disappoint us.
We might see Tom in a toga.
You never know.
Yeah, Tom in a toga. There's a bit of alliteration there as well.
And Sam with a shield, because you'll be doing Shakespeare. Is there a shield in Full Stop? Probably.
There's a skull.
Well, he was a knight. He's a knight, so I'm assuming he had a shield at some point.
Perfect.
In his career. Depending which play you're looking at.
Yeah.
I mean, I think food history now is more accessible than ever, partly due to the internet. And it doesn't pain me to say that, actually, because it certainly helps my research an awful lot in terms of accessing old cookery books which have been digitized. So I think it's easier to get to touch, really, to see and to investigate. You don't have to be an academic. You don't have to be a professional in food history. Anyone can access these resources. Places like the Wellcome Collection have a lot of books that you can access free online, the Internet Archive. So if you hear a podcast and you hear one of us mention a particular book, maybe not Tom if he's dealing with really ancient history, because not necessarily quite so much literature from that period, but certainly 18th century going forward, a lot of those texts are now online and free for anyone to view, aren't they?
Absolutely. Yeah. It's so easy to find them now. Yeah.
The downside of that, though, is there's quite a lot of misconceptions that quite easily get replicated.
Absolutely.
Well, yeah.
Yes.
Well,
And I can think of one. Do you remember? I think I was speaking to Sam and Neil, you about this. The ginger, was it something to do with gingerbread that Elizabeth I had modelled gingerbread to shape her courtiers or something? And that's kind of all over the internet. But I think I spoke to you, Sam, and you said there's actually no evidence of that at all.
No, so I consulted the great Ivan Day, who then also spoke to Peter Breers, and both of them concluded that they couldn't find a source, because I was told to put it in an article I was writing on gingerbread, and I did explain to the editor that I'd heard that and I'd never personally come across a source for it, and so therefore I consulted Ivan and indirectly Peter, and they both confirmed what I already believed to be the fact that it's one of those stories. They did used to make models of kings and queens in gingerbread, in wonderful gingerbread molds, which I, alas, do not possess one myself. But if anyone follows Ivan Day on Instagram, he's got lots of pictures of where he's made wonderful full-size gingerbreads. That makes them sound like they're man-sized, but they're not quite that big, but they're big. They're impressive. But they weren't, Elizabeth didn't. To the best of my knowledge, I've not yet found a contemporary source to say that is a fact. So I think it is an elaboration on something that happened that's been sort of perhaps
there are many
altered.
There are many food myths around. What is your most hated one, or the one that you want to bust once and for all? Do you have a favorite one, guys? Neil?
I've got a favorite one. It's the one that I feel like I'm battling all the time. And I guess it's something I had to realize myself too. And that is, the food from the past wasn't awful.
Yes.
It wasn't gross. It wasn't dirty and filthy. Things were off. The one about putting spices on rotten meat and all that, all these nonsense that there is. The food from the past was great. Obviously, it was dependent upon what part of the social strata you were in. But yeah, food from the past was really good. And if we've got a problem when we're looking in these old cookery books and going, this is weird, that's gross. Well, first of all, try cooking them. They might turn out to be nice. And they almost always are nice, almost always. And, you wouldn't, or I hope, you wouldn't go to somebody else's country and go, to everything that you were served up. Be a little bit offensive. I think you should apply the same to the people in our past, because certainly in the days of factory food and ultra processed foods and things like that, the food from the past, I think, was a lot better, and we can learn a lot from the food techniques that people used to use and we don't use anymore. Yeah,
of course. We kind of learn from the past to apply to our contemporary selves now. It's not like the past was better and the food was healthier and now the food is deadly, or vice versa. We learn all the time, and we learn that factory food can be bad, but also it's convenient and also it's cheaper.
Well, it's better. Yeah, it's better. It's because it's got more convenient, and it's better because it's cheaper. But there's lots of better. Better means different things to different people.
Exactly. So
we're not moving to some kind of pinnacle of perfection.
Exactly. We have to combine these better things together and create something that's going to take us forward, in a sense. So I think that's a big win for me. Ali?
Do you have a food myth that bothers you, Tom?
Let me think, because there's a couple of things. One is not particularly food myth related, but it's like people didn't drink water because the water was polluted
Yeah.
or whatever.
Yes.
And no, people drank from springs, the cleanest water that you ever have. Like we don't have
and you
clean
need
water.
clean water to make beer
Yeah.
in the first place.
Yeah,
In the first place.
exactly. Yeah,
So, like, I mean, even the Romans, they brought water from with aqueducts from springs, the ancient Greeks too. So, yeah, I mean, everybody drank a lot of water. You need water anyway. So that's one thing. And again, like you, Neil, I believe one of the things that annoys me is when we go, ew, that's disgusting from food of the past. And I think one of those things is garum, the fish sauce of the ancient world. And when people hear about it, they say, ooh, stinks. It's like,
but they'd use fish sauce in a Thai dish, wouldn't
happily,
they?
yes, happily. You'll have it on your Thai and your Vietnamese food or your Malaysian or whatever. But ew, it's the same thing. It's good in food. You don't drink it like a short pack. And certainly it's not how you use it.
Fruit and meat, or sugar and meat, is the one that it always makes me laugh when people go, oh, that's disgusting, like mince pies, when you explain mince pies have meat in. And I'm like, well, as you say, Neil, try it and see what you think. Because as I often say, it's like kind of like eating a North African tagine. It's really not that. It's really not that odd.
Well, I mean, everybody eating food in the Western world anyway, you know, it all goes back to the ancient world, the medieval Islamic Empire in particular. So yes, all those North African tagines and combinations, sweet foods, all goes back to there. It's very important.
And Ali, how about you?
Well, Neil took mine because I was going to say the rotten meat one.
Oh, sorry.
But that was included in his, yes. You know, the fact that, you know, if they were that rich and they were that wealthy, they wouldn't have rotten meat. You know, there's no need to cover that with spices and all sorts. So, yes.
It's a good, it can be a preventative.
Yes.
But yes,
yeah, you can.
It doesn't mask anything.
No.
Yeah.
The fun thing with all these myths, like the one that Marco Polo brought pasta to Italy from China, and that one about the spices, they all can be traced very early 20th centuries. Some experts, men usually, they were like, okay, I declare that Marco Polo brought pasta to Italy, and then I declare that spices were used because the meat was rotten in the past, because people of the past didn't know how to cook or eat. Because they were stupid or something.
Yeah, it's Victorian and Edwardian men.
Edwardian, men,
in particular,
yeah.
I guess they're trying to demonstrate how great we are now with our amazing British Empire. So that means we had to have risen above a lot of bad stuff. So I think that's where a lot of this, you know, and people throwing poo and wee out of the windows and stuff like that. I mean, none of that ever happened. It didn't happen. Obviously, people wouldn't just throw poo out of their window onto the passers-by. But these things are made up to say, but look how amazing we are now and how superior we are now.
Yeah.
But so there's a lot of wading through that, isn't there, when you're looking at it? I mean, I think any historian is wading through a certain amount of these Victorian and Edwardian, complete, just made up, almost propaganda.
Exactly, yeah.
Yes. Talking of propaganda, there was Filippo Marinetti, who was the founder of Futurism, and he said that pasta was terrible because it made people lazy. So that's a food myth. And some people think that, you know, too many carbs, but it's because of the quantities that we eat now. But if, you know, it doesn't per se make you any more sluggish or lazy. It's other foods, I guess.
Absolutely, 100%.
I think the other interesting thing about food history is looking at how attitudes to the way we eat and the way we view certain foods, whether it be vegetables or pasta or carbs, compared to modern attitudes. I mean, I won't go as far as to say history repeats itself, because I think times are different, circumstances are different, the environment's different, but it's certainly, you do see some patterns. So I'm particularly, from the point of view of the session I'm doing, I'm interested to see, in a way, how our views of obesity, for example, because Sir John Falstaff is the only character that is described in terms of his physical appearance by Shakespeare as being, he's fat. So I'm interested to see how the views of, in Tudor and early Stuart England, of obesity compared to modern attitudes towards obesity, for example.
Brilliant, fantastic. I think we should move on to something else. I think we should. I want to see something that really excites you, an object that you find that it's from the past that you think it's worth talking about, or a book or something. Do you have something
Sure.
in your hands?
Sure.
Sam?
Who's going to show theirs first?
Sam.
So, I mean, it won't come as any surprise to anyone who knows me, but I've got a copy here of a 1 shilling Mrs. Beeton's cookery book, which isn't what I was going to show you particularly. But inside this was given to me by my grandmother. I think this copy dates from 1894. But inside it was this tiny little handwritten book. I mean, it's not even really a book. It's like, it's an almanac.
Yeah.
And on the front is a name, Eliza Anna Anderson, who is complicated. She's basically like my grandmother's second or third cousin, but I call her Great Aunt Eliza because the life's too short to go through cousins 3 times removed and all that larky. Anyway, this is kind of one of the reasons why I got into food history, because as well as the picture of the roasted swan, when my grandma gave me this, I was just blown away that this woman who was in service had made notes, mostly, Neil, you'll be pleased to hear, of puddings to preserve them, whether it was for her own use or whether it was just as an aid memoir when she was learning how to cook. We don't know an awful lot about Eliza. She was in service for a period, but she seems to have, when she got married, to have come out of service. So, but yeah, that's my prized possession. It's not particularly necessarily interesting, but it's interesting to me because it's a bit of my family history. And I have made that. The Christmas pudding I make every year is Aunt Eliza's from this very notebook.
Oh, fantastic.
Oh, wonderful.
It's also my Christmas pudding now that I make.
Oh,
yeah.
Or Aunt Eliza's, yeah. It's a very good recipe. Yeah.
Who knows where Aunt Eliza nicked it from? I'm assuming it isn't her recipe. I'm assuming it's something copied out of somebody else's book, but it's a very nice Christmas pudding.
It takes 15 hours to boil it, if I remember rightly. Is that right? It's massive.
If you make Aunt Eliza, I scaled it down when I make it for cookery demos and stuff. Yeah. But the original size was massive. I'm guessing again it was made to cater for a lot of people. Yeah,
I think
about 15 hours.
This Christmas past, I did the same recipe. So I remember.
I think you did. Yeah.
Yeah.
There we go. See, Aunt Eliza's cookery book is still relevant today. Well, with 3 people.
Yeah. Indeed.
I just receive Sam's mince, which I assume is perhaps from that recipe or from Aunt Eliza's book as well.
Oh, the mincemeat. No, I think that was medlar mincemeat. That was me trying to find uses for medlars because a historic fruit, and I make it.
Nice.
It's not Aunt Eliza's recipe, but it's my recipe.
Okay.
I'll make you a pudding next year or this year.
I'll hold you to that. That's Christmas is coming up fast.
It is.
I brought this, which is a dough cutter. It's like over 100 years old. It's been passed down through members of my family who don't want it, so it's arrived to me. And I use it to just make nice shapes when I'm doing homemade pasta, especially ravioli. It's nice to have like the edges slightly, geometrical. I'm just used to that. And I also have this, which is very old, which is used to make very thin spaghetti, and it's kind of a, what do you call this? Mattarello. It's like a rolling
pin. Yeah.
A rolling pin,
yeah.
But it's got grooves, and it's got very thin grooves so that you can just, when you put the dough over it, just cuts it automatically into very thin strips.
That's so cool.
That's cool.
That is very cool.
So very old bits that I've brought with me. What about you, Tom?
Well, I didn't go to any archaeological sites to dig and steal stuff.
Not this time.
I'm not a. So I think I saw you the book. So obviously it's a Silence Feasts. The classical cookbook by Sally Granger and Andrew Dalby. That I've been using it and trying the recipes and make them again and again and again and trying to figure out a way that either going to be closer to the ancient world or find the ingredients and so on. And the book Silent Feasts by Andrew Dalby, which is about food in ancient Greece. So it's quite big tome and has a lot of information and lots of stuff that if you want to take a deep dive into ancient Greece and what they ate from Neolithic times onwards, it's my thing.
Cool.
And Neil.
Well, I change my mind quite often as to what is really, really interesting me at the minute. And I'm always on the lookout for things. So I'm very interested in fermentation at the minute. I am down a bit of an oatcakes rabbit hole. And I managed after looking for a long time, managed to get hold of a riddle board.
Oh.
It has a crack in it, as you can see. I need to repair that with some. Well, yeah, indeed. But this was used to make Yorkshire oatcakes called riddle cakes. Not just in Yorkshire, but around sort of the northeast, northwest, but focused mainly in Yorkshire. Fearsomely difficult to make, apparently. So I'm really looking forward to working out how it was done.
When is this from?
Where's it from time period wise?
Time period wise, yes.
Well, I don't know how old this one is. It's 19th century. It's 19th century. It's walnut.
Beautiful colour.
It is a beautiful colour.
Yeah.
It's strange. It's, most people in Yorkshire were eating oatcakes up until the 1920s. Right. And then as soon as people didn't have to cook them anymore, they didn't. They went completely extinct. Ones that are easier to make, like Derbyshire oatcakes or Scottish oatcakes, they've lived on. But these, and they just haven't, because they're just so hard, and they're hard to kind of make in factories and things, because you make a really runny batter. Yeah. And you put your oatmeal on top of here, pour your batter on it so you can move it around, and you either slide it onto your hot plate and then pull it as you slide it to stretch it out.
Right.
Oh, that sounds quite complicated.
Or you put it on a floured cushion, boom, and then boom.
Okay.
Wow.
I'm going to say that again because people are listening to this and didn't know what I did. You get a floured cushion and then you tip it very quickly onto the floured cushion. So you got your sort of runny batter, but it's all covered in flour, oat flour. And then you can deftly, hopefully, pop it onto the hot plate that way. So you can see, absolute nightmare. But I'm going to have fun trying to make that. And it's a sourdough mixture that was used.
And Neil, would you do that? Would you do that for a Serve It Forth by any chance?
No.
The festival?
Live demo. I want the live demo of that.
Maybe.
Live demo of that.
Once we've had those cocktails, I'm like,
anything is possible.
Might get a bit of hubris.
And then I wanted to ask you, what's a very surprising thing that you've learnt from an old menu or a recipe book? And one for me was when I first started out, I saw that at some point the recipes that were normally just one paragraph with ingredient lists not separated out was like one, it was nearly like reading a normal book, whereas now the recipes structurally are quite different and you get everything separated in a very clear way. And that changed, not that long ago, really. Was it with raffle, Neil? I think you said in your book.
The first person to add an ingredients list, as it were, was Eliza Acton.
That's it, Eliza Acton, yeah.
But for some reason, she put them after the recipe.
Yeah,
realised why that made sense.
Yeah,
and I think it was Mrs. Beaton who's the first person to put the ingredients first.
Right.
I think that's right.
And before I was really into all this, I hadn't really given that a second thought. And then I was going back in recipe books that were older and older, and I was like, well, this is different, and this is different. So that for me was like something quite surprising. What about you, Sam? Is there anything that surprises you?
Gosh, I don't know, really.
Sam is not surprised by anything.
I don't know. I suppose is when you... and I suppose when I first got into food history, it was the prevalence of things like sugar. Until you sort of appreciate that, because there were no measurements. So they would add, you'd see like a savoury recipe and then they would say like, list the ingredients, and you're like, okay. I was on board with the spices and even the dried fruit, but when then it says and sugar, you're kind of like blancmange from the medieval period, which was more like a sort of a rice and chickeny porridgey thing. And you sort of read it and you think, oh, that's different. But actually, when you think that actually sugar was a spice back then, and so wouldn't have been used in great quantities because of its expense, it makes more sense. And actually, if you only add a little bit of sugar to a lot of dishes, even like a tomato sauce now, makes a huge difference.
Yeah.
So I suppose that was surprising at first when I first got into food history.
Yeah. I think for me, it's something similar, I suppose. The fact that the more you dig into the past, the more you find out that people used and loved like fermented food and pickled food and sweet and sour taste. So that kind of different combinations of sweet and sour, like it was always common. You would have something sweet with something vinegary, and it was, honey in wine, vinegar in wine. And sweet and sour, kind of universal in most traditional ancient cuisines throughout the world, basically.
There's an aigadus recipe in form of curry, which is literally means sweet sour, or sour sweet, actually.
Sour sweet, yeah.
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 Nice.
How about you, Neil?
Well, for me, I guess I touched on it a little bit earlier, was just the sheer variety of ingredients. So especially things like offal and bits of animal that I didn't even know you could eat.
Yes, like pallets.
I was going to say like the soft palate or spinal cords and, things like that, which I just found amazing. And, you get recipes, especially early modern period recipes of pies, and there's like a dozen different ingredients in there, and most of them, or some of them anyway, you haven't heard of, and you just think, this is just so strange. It's just so fascinating working these things out. And I guess that's what leapt out to me. The first historical cookbook I bought was Elizabeth Raffald, 1769, The Experienced English Housekeeper. So that's always been my touchstone. And I just remember reading through, just going, I just can't believe I remember her roast pig recipe starts with, stick your pig with a blade between the neck and shoulder blade.
Wonderful.
Or words to that effect. And I just couldn't believe what I was reading, I was hooked thereafter, really.
It's so interesting because I think a lot of, from what I'm hearing as well with Tom's experience and Sam's, a lot of what we're left with in terms of what our family has in the house anyway, that we grow up, or gifts, can really have a huge influence on our cooking, on how we cook things. And but then we do ultimately make our own choices, I think, at some point. So it would be interesting to hear as well from listeners what choices they've made, like how they've changed the direction of their family's traditional cooking, or if they, what changes they implement and make and everything else. Because I think every recipe and every meal tells its own story. It's never the same, and it never can be. Because of very different reasons.
Exactly. And talking about recipes and cooking, what are your biggest disasters? Do you have any? Many.
I live, do you know what? I live vicariously through Neil's, because after Neil told me that big pie one that he did, I just tell Neil's story now. I don't even tell my own anymore.
Wait, Neil, do you want to tell everyone about your big pie story, or have you got another one in your arsenal?
No. That's Hannah Glass. I'll start that.
Hannah Glass, yeah. Oh, the Yorkshire Christmas pie.
Hannah Glass's Yorkshire Christmas pie, from The Art of Cookery Made Plain and Easy. And ever since I made this recipe, I always had, nothing is neither plain nor easy in that cookbook.
No.
Especially the Yorkshire Christmas pie. Yeah, it was one of those, you have to bone a load of different birds, all stuffed inside one another in this huge pie. It took me a week to make the pastry and to construct the casing. I did it for a TV show. And I did say to them that you need to be highly trained pastry chef from 250 years ago to be able to make this. And they were just like, it'll be fine. So, all right, well, I told you. Yes, so we filmed it, took all day, and then we put it in this quite small oven for what it was. It took two of us to pick it up, and we just watched it collapse, and it just lent on the glass door of the oven. And then all the butter, there's about 4 kilos of butter in it or something stupid, all just started pouring out of the sides, like two waterfalls, and it's trickling out the bottom of the oven. And
I would love to have seen.
It took 14 hours to cook it, and when it came back, it came out completely black. It was not used in the TV program, needless to say. Yeah,
that's the top. Yeah.
So that's my one.
I had a complete disaster when I was testing recipes for my first book for first catch of gingerbread, I wanted to make proper medieval gingerbread, or sort of medieval, early modern, with the breadcrumbs and the honey and the spices. And so I chose to use Hugh Platt's recipe because I thought it sounded quite nice, but it had red wine and licorice in. And I did forever blame it on the licorice, but I've made amends with licorice in recent times. So I'm not going to lay the blame at the licorice. I think it was the fault of the red wine, but I can assure the listeners that red wine, spices, including licorice, and honey and breadcrumbs does not make a nice gingerbread, in my opinion.
Right.
So that didn't make it into the book. I'm pleased to report, though, that I have managed to find a recipe that was more acceptable. And there is a proper early modern gingerbread using breadcrumbs and honey in the new book, which isn't disgusting. But the first one I made was literally, it was inedible. It was vile. I don't know whether it may have been cook's error on my part, but it was, wasn't to my taste, so it didn't make it in. It's possibly one of the worst ones. There's probably been others. I haven't had anything quite as spectacular as Neil's collapsing pie yet.
What about you, Tom? Any spectacular memories of disasters?
Unfortunately, they're not spectacular, but there were plenty of small ones because I used to do a pop-up with two of my best friends, Stathis and Christina. We used to be called the Philosopher's Stove.
Good name.
Yeah, brilliant name. We did ancient Greek and Roman food specifically, but we branched out in other stuff as well. But like cooking the recipes for paying guests, all these different recipes. So sometimes I was too ambitious with stuff. So there is a layered honey cake from ancient Rome and Greece called placenta. Nothing to do with placenta. It's a cake with semolina and flour, white flour, and ricotta type of cheese, goat cheese, honey, and so on. So it's kind of a very complicated instructions from Cato on the agriculture, his manual, and kind of you have to read it a few times, you have to make it a few times, and I was like, who needs to make it 5 times? I'll make it on the night. It's going to be fine. And trying to make all the layers and fold it properly and nicely and look like a nice round multi-layered cake. It didn't kind of work. The inside was not cooked properly, so the dough inside was a bit raw, and obviously you had to serve it to the guests, and you had to have enough portions for all the guests. And it was kind of a disaster in that respect. There was still some of it cooked and tasted nice and interesting, but you're like, okay, that was a bit of a mistake. And most of the recipes from the ancient world, like they need a bit of work and interpretation. And the first time you try them, you're like, is that how it's supposed to be tasting? Like there was a recipe for a sea bream with a crust of pecorino cheese with silphium, which is a safoitida, and
sounds nice.
Cumin, which sounds nice, and I kind of like it. But how do you make the cheese crust to stay on the fish and actually envelop it and serve it like this?
Yes, these are the tricks you're not told.
Yeah.
No.
It kind of always slips and leaves the fish naked. You have the cheese on the side and the fish on the other side. That's exactly what I said I'm going to do. So it was lots of small missteps.
Come on, Ali, you must have one.
Oh, I was catering. We were doing an event, and it was going really well. Of course, there was nothing. It was just a standard kind of for a group of people that were after a talk or something. I can't really precisely remember what it was about, but we had all these little canapes and little sardines with things sticking out of them and all, and kind of nearing the end, and there was a bit of stuff left over, and so having a bit of food ourselves, and then like 5 or 6 people walk in and they want the full set of food, and we basically eating the food that was meant to be going to them. It's like, oh, maybe not. Stop! Don't put that sardine in your mouth. It was very kind of saved at the last minute. So that kind of thing. And then many others that I've signed too many non-disclosure agreements to discuss, but some were pretty major.
Can't
in terms
just say
of
that. Leave it hanging.
Well, let's just say
Shocking.
that there was royalty involved. So I'm really not at liberty to speak unless I want my head cut off.
Right. Fair enough.
So, thank you, everyone. That's been really interesting chatting to you, and hopefully everyone's now really enthused to come to our Food History Festival on the 18th of October. That's a Saturday. If you can't be there for all of the sessions, if you buy a ticket, we will be recording the sessions and you'll be able to watch them later on at your leisure, or rewatch them if you've been there in person and want to see us again for a second, third, fourth, or fifth time. So yes, they will be pre-recorded. They won't be pre-recorded. They will be recorded on the day, so you can watch them if you can't be there for the entire day. So that's Saturday, the 18th of October, and tickets are available now. And you can, at the moment, get an early bird discount rate of 25%. So there will be details in the bio or on our various websites, or indeed the Serve It Forth website, which you can find online.
And don't forget to follow us on social media. We're on Blue Sky at Serve It Forth Fest, on Instagram and on TikTok.
Excellent. Oh, well, we can't wait to see you there.
It's going to be fun.
No, it'd be good fun.
Yeah.
See you, everyone.
And see you all.
Cheerio.
Bye-bye.
Bye.